Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack one of the most dramatic transformations in modern history. We're looking at how a desperate nation completely revolutionized its ability to feed itself. And honestly, just as importantly, we're going to examine the hidden long-term price it eventually paid for that survival. If you want to understand how agricultural tech can simultaneously save millions of lives and create entirely new generational crises, well, this is the story you absolutely need to hear. To really grasp the magnitude of what happened, we've got to travel back to India in the late 1950s and 60s. And the picture back then was incredibly grim. First off, the country was just getting battered by a series of severe natural calamities. At the exact same time, a rapid increase in population was driving up the demand for food grains to completely unprecedented levels. The traditional, largely stagnant agricultural sector simply couldn't keep up. So, this culminated in a massive food crisis by the mid-1960s. The situation was so dire that the government was forced into a humiliating reliance on importing food grains from other countries just to keep its population alive. The nation was literally on the brink of starvation, creating this super urgent need for drastic modernization.
Part 1. The Solution, a package program.
You see, the government realized that tiny, incremental changes just weren't going to cut it anymore. So in the mid-1960s, they introduced a package program of modern agricultural technology. Today, we know it as the Green Revolution, and it earned that famous nickname for a very specific reason. The new tech arrived suddenly, it spread incredibly quickly across the region, and it delivered dramatic results, a massive increase in agricultural production and productivity over a remarkably short span of time. It really wasn't an evolution. It was quite literally a revolution. But this revolution wasn't just a single magic invention. It was a strict formula. Often called seed fertilizer water technology, this modern approach required the joint application of 4 specific components to actually work. First, high-yielding variety, or HYV seeds. Second, chemical fertilizers to supercharge the growth. Third, powerful chemical pesticides to protect those crops. And fourth, an adequate, reliable system of irrigation. If you missed even one of these pieces, the whole package failed. But when you apply them all together, this synergy was explosive. Which leads us to Part 2, the triumph, dramatic agricultural results. The introduction of this package program was just an undeniable, monumental triumph. Almost overnight in historical terms, the nation achieved what seemed totally impossible just a few years earlier. It completely transformed its food security landscape and became self-sufficient in food grain production. If you want to put a number on that success, just look at this figure, 3.8 times. The new tech brought about a razor-sharp rise in land yield. To give you a concrete example from the data, the yield per acre of wheat multiplied by a staggering 3.8 times between 1960-61 and 2017-18. That's not just a slight improvement, right? That is an exponential leap in human productivity. And the structural shift was profound. We transitioned from a really bleak past, a stagnant agricultural sector utterly failing to meet the basic survival demands of a growing population, to a totally dynamic present. The Green Revolution proved that Indian agriculture was rapidly improving. It transformed this historically lagging sector into an active partner in the broader economic development of the country. As a direct result, agricultural income increased, and the overall economic conditions of farmers saw massive improvements. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were actually contributing to an economic engine. But we have to pause here. You know, when you force nature to produce almost 4 times its normal output through heavy chemical intervention, there's always a bill that comes due. We have to look past the immediate triumph and ask a very, very difficult question. But at what cost? And that brings us to Part 3, the complication, the ecological cost. This is the dark twist of our story. The monumental achievements of the Green Revolution, the very things that saved millions from starvation, were ultimately financed at an immense expense to the local ecology and environment. The bill for that rapid modernization was basically handed down to the earth itself. The crucial point here is that this modern system of farming had a severe compounding darker side. The absolute reliance on this package program created an extensive dependence on harsh chemicals and pesticides. Over time, this intense chemical farming has resulted in a noticeable decrease in the natural fertility of the land. Now, we're seeing severe environmental damage reflected in rapid soil erosion and soil salinity. There's widespread chemical contamination affecting the ecosystem and, perhaps most alarmingly, devastating genetic erosion, as diverse traditional crops were totally wiped out in favor of a few high-yielding varieties. The soil that was forced to give so much is now fundamentally degraded.
Which leaves us with this final, striking reality to consider. The Green Revolution represents the ultimate trade-off. In the 1960s, the choice was stark: modernize aggressively or face catastrophic starvation. They chose human survival, and obviously it worked brilliantly, but it sacrificed long-term ecological sustainability in the process. As we look at the degraded soils and contaminated waters today, it really forces us to ask, how do we balance the desperate need to feed a growing population right now with the absolute necessity of leaving a habitable, fertile Earth for the generations that follow? That's the lingering challenge of the Green Revolution. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.